The ever-changing landscape of the Big Ten, i.e. USC, UCLA, coming to the conference here in 2024 continues to intrigue me and the rest of College Football Nation. We welcome you into the voice of college football. My name's Mark. If you are stumbling across our little channel for the first time, welcome. You are in store for the best discussion, debate, and analysis you will find anywhere. That's the aim, that's the goal, that's the mission. We try our very best each and every day to hit that goal. And with your help, we do. We appreciate your participation. Leave your comments and questions there in the chat. So for the last 6 Thursdays, we have had a conversation with Steve Deace from Michigan Podcast every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We call it The One because it is one major college football topic for Steve and I to discuss and debate. When I say discuss and debate, sometimes it's a debate, sometimes it's merely a discussion because our views are strictly authentic. We are not manufacturing a debate, so sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. And at 5 o'clock today, we will discuss USC, UCLA to the Big Ten and how the Trojans and Bruins will fare against the 14 from the Big Ten and what that will look like in years to come in regards to the Bruins and the Trojans competing for Big Ten championships and beyond. Again, we welcome you into the voice of college football. Want to remind you that we've got a Discord. What that is a just major, massive college football discussion that goes on all the time, 24/7, 365. So join us on Discord for college football discussion with our famed knuckleheads all the time. Go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV, sign up there, and that's just the beginning of the benefits there is that you join our college football community on the voice of college football. I will take your calls for the next 20 minutes. Keep in mind that when Steve joins us at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, bam, sorry, your call's done. Whether we're 3 minutes into the call or 3 seconds, we are done. We are going right into the show at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. But we have learned through doing this for 6 weeks now that it would be best for us to get things ramped up about a half hour early, invite all of you in here because it's difficult for people to grab the link, get here right on time because we start, bam, at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and run for a half hour. And welcome your sponsored comments and questions. We will take your sponsored comments and questions after Steve and I debate for 10 or 15 minutes. So we appreciate that. I posted a video about 2 hours ago about Ohio State's cancellation of the 2 scheduled games against the Washington Huskies in 2024 and 2025. I would like to follow up on a few responses that were made to that video because here was my basic take. My basic take is that we live in a college football landscape right now where the expectation is that every Power 5 team, especially at the ilk of Ohio State, plays at least one brand name Power 5 team in their non-conference schedule. So depending on whether you play in the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, or the Pac-12, of course, you play 3 or 4 non-conference games. As a member of the Big Ten, Ohio State plays 3 non-conference games. So we would expect, it's the expectation of myself, and I think most reasonable college football fans, for everyone to play one tough opponent. So we get a bit angered, and we get a little bit amused, and we can troll and make fun of those teams and those fan bases when they don't play anybody, a la UCLA last year. They have an excuse. UCLA played 3 cream puffs in the non-conference schedule. Michigan played 3 cream puffs, as they will again this schedule. Of course, I mentioned those two because they were scheduled to play much like Ohio State and Washington in 24 and 25, UCLA and Michigan scheduled to play in 2022 and 3. Those games were canceled. Of course, we know what happened not long after those games were canceled, or maybe it was after, I forget the timing exactly, but in that same time frame, of course, then it was announced that USC and UCLA would be joining the Big Ten, and Michigan and UCLA will be playing, if not every season, they will be playing, we would think, based on schedule projections. And I've made my own here at the Voice of College Football based on a 3-6-6 model that at the very least, Michigan and UCLA under that format will play every other year. So go ahead, cancel the series. We're going to see in a few years anyway at the Rose Bowl and at the Big House. Washington was not part of that entry to the Big Ten, of course. Washington still in the Pac-12/Pac-10 right now. But it calls into question, well, will Washington join the Big Ten? Is this letting us know that Washington, who, of course, it was very well known that Washington and Oregon applied for membership to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten said, we're not saying no, we're saying, hold on, that maybe this is a precursor to Washington joining the Big Ten. Again, I would have to go back to see the timing of the Michigan UCLA schedule cancellation announcement versus when it was announced that USC and UCLA was joining the Big Ten. We know that happened in the summer of 2022, because my thought about the cancellation of these games, as it could be connected to a conference realignment and movement for Washington, and most likely if Washington's coming, it could be some type of pairing with Washington/Oregon. From a football standpoint, those seem to be the ones people want and linked together. They're rivals. They're in the Northwest. But with other things considered, could it be Washington-Stanford? Could it be Washington-Oregon? What could the twosome look like from the Pac-12 if there's another expansion realignment situation? Well, here's my thought. Why would they announce this? Okay, we are still 7 months away from the 2023 season. Why cancel a game in 2024 and 25 and make that announcement if you're going to realign the conferences and this game's going to be played anyway, but within the conference? Why not make that announcement if you have to? Of course, if the announcement that Washington's joining the Big Ten comes before the announcement of the game cancellation and the contract being severed, then that makes that null and void. It's no longer a non-conference game and all is well and good. Why wouldn't you wait until at least you were forced to fill that non-conference slot to then raise the questions that people would have to say, wait a minute, you're full in 24 and 25. You just added Team X. What's going on? Well, then you would make the announcement, okay, that there's a realignment and Washington's joining the Big Ten. Okay. So that's really massive, big picture, talking conference alignment and realignment. From a smaller standpoint, just looking at Ohio State's schedule in particular, and now Washington's schedule, but Ohio State being the initiator of this, and obviously the president or the athletic director for Washington. I cited this in the video. I apologize, can't remember her name. But the Washington athletic director cited the grave disappointment that they have because they will not be playing Ohio State. So none of this would have to be brought out into the public if they knew that Washington was joining the Big Ten. That's why I question as to these theories that Washington is therefore joining the Big Ten because they're canceling this game. I do understand the connection being made, and relating this situation to Michigan UCLA. I get that. But why would you need to do that before you are in position to schedule the makeup game, the game that you're going to replace the opponent? Okay, again, the smaller scale on this is that Ohio State is going to be playing a lousy 2024 non-conference schedule. And that upsets me because Michigan just played one and they are going to play another one this year. And I don't care how tough your non-conference schedule is or your conference schedule is, you have to play someone. And so Michigan's schedule last year was deplorable. Their schedule this coming season is deplorable. Now Ohio State, unless they can fill that opening with somebody of consequence, which I highly doubt because most of those teams, brand name teams, they've sewn up their 2024 schedules already. It's only a year and a half away. So the likelihood of Ohio State finding a meaningful opponent is almost nil. They may surprise me. Maybe there's somebody out there that they can match up one of those 2 weeks with. They've got 2-week flexibility there. They've got what is going to be a bye week and then what's going to be a game week. So they can play with those dates both seasons, but they're going to have to come up with somebody. And most likely it's going to be the likes of Arkansas State or somebody of that caliber. All right. We do have a caller on the line. We'll bring him in right here at the Voice of College Football. We've got our buddy John chiming in. John, how you doing?
Hey, Mark. Oh, man, this news is something, isn't it? You know, okay. So, as we know, Michigan took a lot of righteous grief about canceling UCLA. I was one of the biggest critics of it. I thought it was stupid. I said, bring on UCLA. Let's do it. And even, joined in the Fire Ward conversation. We talked about that yesterday on the Michigan football show that everyone should check out every week. But anyway, now we have this news, and I read in the Seattle Times that Gene Smith gave the same rationale, exact same rationale that Ward Manuel gave about UCLA, that they are going, as a result of this, because it was going to be an away game, as a result of this, we are going to schedule an 8th home game in 2024. So unless your theory is right now your theory might be right that Washington could be joining the Big Ten, and then I revoke this because, then in that case, I get it.
Well, just to be clear, John, sorry to cut you off. That's not my theory. We received a lot of comments to the channel.
Got it.
That is the theory that's out there. And
it could be a theory.
I didn't put down those theories. I said that's possible, but I just don't understand announcing this cancellation. And I'm in the process of looking up when. Okay, I got it right here. In October of 2019 is when Michigan canceled with UCLA. So obviously that was almost 2 years prior to the announcement of UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten. So this would be similar from a timing standpoint.
Do you have a guess as to, because I think you mentioned earlier on the video you did that you're not really sure who they could potentially get as like a top tier opponent at this point. I think I remember something about that. Like it's probably going to be a Hawaii situation, maybe better than Hawaii, but is it possible to get somebody like a higher level Power 5 team at this point?
The only thing that we can really do is just go to every team in the Power 5 and look at their future schedules for 2024 and see if there's an opening for one of those 2 weeks. And again, there is a little bit of flexibility because there are 2 weeks that they're dealing with, which leads me to believe there's going to be a bye. They're going to take a bye on whichever week they can't schedule the game.
Okay.
And so they've got that, at least that option to present to any school to say, we can schedule this week or this week. But if I was going to take the deep dive, which I'm curious enough to do, but I don't know if my schedule is going to allow me to go through 65 Power 5 teams, or I think we're up to 69 now,
right?
To go through every team. But I just knowing how most of the big name schools schedule so far out, for them to have an opening in 2024 when it's February of 2023.
Sounds
That's
like a
usually,
Hawaii.
yeah, that's exactly. Those are the type games. Yeah. Um, and then also those, even if there's somebody out there, I'll just throw out a name, Kansas State, somebody decent, not going to throw out a top 10 team, but hey, they sure were this year. Kansas State, if they're already playing somebody tough in their 3 non-conference games, are they going to be willing to? Do they want to schedule Ohio State? So you also have to have a willing partner.
Right. One of the things I've always said, out of respect for Ohio State, is that they always schedule a good out of conference opponent, and that's it's been the case this past year with Notre Dame, and it's gone back all pretty much every year. There's been somebody really good in the middle or one of those spots. And now it seems like it's the shoes on the other foot, because from what I understand, the Texas and Oklahoma out of conference with Michigan is staying, although they switched the home and away for Texas for, I guess, Fox had that stipulation that they had to switch the locales. But otherwise, those games seem to be happening. And I know some people said they would get canceled, but looks like they're happening.
John, I would like to address the comment made here by Jason. So I want to clarify something here. You're completely right, Jason. Ohio State doesn't need to schedule anyone, just like Michigan
Correct.
didn't need to schedule anyone. So I'm speaking from a fan's perspective, from an entertainment
Right.
perspective.
Entertainment.
Yeah, Ohio State, just like Michigan did the last 2 years, nobody's going to question if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, whether they belong in the playoff.
Right.
And going forward, we're talking about a 12-team playoff. Go 10-2, you're Ohio State.
Yeah.
You played in a good Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody is going to challenge that whatsoever. No,
Yeah.
it's not needed. Nope.
Yeah. I mean, I think I made a comment a couple of weeks ago like that, and I went too far and I said, well, everybody's doing it now. Well, not everybody's doing it, but quite a few schools are doing this, because it's about how do you stay in the letter of the law, but at the same time, like, get your school in the best position to get to the playoffs, which seems to be the promised land for at least some of maybe the top 25, maybe not everybody, because Iowa's giving bonuses for 7 wins, but I think that's that's kind of the goal, get to the playoffs. So there is a method to the madness, I guess.
Will there be scenarios out there? And the answer is yes, where a team will have scheduled a difficult non-conference game, won that game, and that will be a tiebreaker of sorts for the College Football Playoff Committee to say, Auburn went 9-3, but they went to Penn State and won, versus North Carolina went 9-3 and they didn't schedule anyone. So we're going to give them but that's going to be the aberration compared to we didn't schedule anyone. We won 10 games. We got in. We didn't need to schedule anyone. You're right, Jason. You are completely right. And that's another thing that's wrong with college football, and it's being accentuated by this playoff expansion.
Yeah, and what Mike said, looking forward to UNLV in East Carolina. Well, I'm a little bummed that UNLV is going to be, I mean, I know why they're doing it at Michigan Stadium, but that would be a great excuse to go out to Allegiant and hang out at the $7 billion or however much it was, Allegiant Stadium. So I've wanted to check that out, but my trips to Vegas the last couple of years have been all business. So I haven't been able to get out to the stadium yet.
Now, the point that NoCal Matt is bringing up here, so you may be right, you may be wrong. This is why, Matt. He states here, we're going to see 10-2 teams from the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big 12 get left out of the 12-team format. Okay. If we go back through history and we treat the AP poll as being the College Football Playoff Committee, let's just make that reach here for a second. That's not true, because I've done it. I've gone through history, gone through the last 20 years and said, okay, what would the 12-team playoff look like based on the AP poll? Well, based, of course, on the College Football Playoff rankings going back to 2014. Prior to that, going by the AP poll, which aligns pretty closely with the college football playoff rankings, and those 10-2 teams would all make it. However, we don't know how the playoff committee is going to treat. See, right now with a 14 playoff, their first 4 slots mean everything, of course. What they rank teams after that, should they be ethical? Should they be playing out the process all the way through and ranking those teams as they would and taking just as much care? Or does that 12 team format change their thinking on some of those spots? And instead of throwing somebody a bone at your number 10, no, now that you've become a playoff team, we're backing you up.
Yeah, well, part of it is, as we know, that the 6 highest ranked conference winners get auto bids, which means I could see very clearly a 10-2 ACC winner or Pac winner or Big 12 winner. They're getting in, period. So unless they're so low ranked that 6 others, which I don't see that as a super likely scenario, but maybe. But I think that with the auto bids, it's more likely that you'll see the 10-2 teams like that are champions get in. But I know that the guy that everybody's here to see is going to be here in a minute, so I don't want to keep you for that.
Well, appreciate you keeping me company, John.
Absolutely, and don't forget, join the Patreon. $5. Check it out; it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, John.
Thanks.
See you soon. That's our buddy John. He's joined us the last few weeks and will continue to do so on the Michigan show that we present each and every Wednesday live over on the Michigan channel. Join us each Wednesday, currently at 5:30 Eastern time. Start time's always subject to change. Yes. Gregory, good to see you right here. Thank you for being here. We're awaiting Steve jumping online to talk USC, UCLA, and how they will fare in the Big Ten. Should be a good time. Mike 3883, it's easier to pick out who has not competed in the Big Ten the past decade than who has. Northwestern has made multiple Big Ten championship appearances recently. Iowa's terrible offense a couple years ago. Not to be obvious or not to pick on you, Mike, but if I'm reading this correctly, yes, I would think that if we're looking at the past decade, it's so you're basically saying it's going to be easier to project who's not going to be able to compete than who is going to be able to compete for championships. I would tend to agree with that because we've got 3 schools, maybe 4, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Penn State, that most people are going to assume are going to continue to recruit, build, do all the things required to be competitive at that level. However, if Michigan fell off, if Penn State fell off, Ohio State, USC, we've all seen it to various degrees, and fell out of contention and didn't fall off the map to become Kansas, but we're 7-5, 8-4 teams for a period of time. Nobody would be utterly shocked by that. On the other hand, if Rutgers shot up to the top of the Big Ten and competed for championships, people would be utterly shocked by that. Yes. So point well taken there, Mike. And I believe Steve is here and ready to roll.
How's it going, brother?
Mr. Steve Deace, Michigan Podcast. I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing better now that my camera decided to work on my phone. So sorry about the delay.
No problem. That is kind of crucial to the whole deal. I run into those issues myself. Good to see Steve here. And we are ready to roll for what we call the one major college football topic that we present here each and every week with Steve. Please lock it in every Thursday at 5 Eastern time. Leave those sponsored comments and questions in the live chat, and we will get to them. All right, Steve, of course, we know that USC and UCLA are on their way to play in the Heartland, and they will do so in 2024. USC, to throw you some numbers here, 65% winning percentage in the past 10 years in what has not been a golden age for USC football compared to the previous 10 years, of course. They did win, curiously, 71% of their games against Pac-12 competition during that time, meaning they're losing to Notre Dame. They're losing postseason games. They're losing other big non-conference games, i.e. Alabama, a zillion to 3 in Dallas about 5 years ago. They have finished in the top 25 7 of the last 10 years and 3 times in the top 10. But prior to that, Pete Carroll just completely owned matchups with the Big Ten. And we're talking stellar Big Ten competition like Michigan and Ohio State. UCLA, of course, barely over 50% in the last 10 years. Jim Mora had the Bruins in a pretty decent spot. I really don't know why they let him go, but Chip Kelly's finally starting to win. He's got 17 wins the last 2 years, but they're at 54% winning percentage over the last 10 years. So for you, projecting what is USC currently and how they project forward, how do you see them competing in the Big Ten?
Starting with just USC to begin
Sure.
with. I think their program is in better shape, obviously, than UCLA's. I mean, UCLA, I think, has had one or none when it comes to double-digit win seasons so far this century. And so I think, and the coach that they have in place there with Lincoln Riley, I think they're much more aggressive from an NIL perspective, maybe even to the point of allegedly tampering with players via the transfer portal. I think they're in better shape. I don't think they're in the kind of shape yet to take the kind of physical pounding they are going to take week in and week out in the Big Ten. And I think that, depending on what the scheduling model will be, and I'm pretty confident from what I'm told that you're looking at a 3-6 model where you're going to have 3 permanent rivals. And the schools have been asked to submit who they want their 3 to be. I'm actually told that Michigan did not submit Michigan State as one of its 3 rivals. I think I'm told it was Ohio State, Penn State, and UCLA is who Michigan actually asked for. But, that information could be wrong. Just who told me that usually isn't. That's a digression, though. I think you're probably looking at 3 permanent rivals because of the lucrative TV contract. You're going to see Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, and UCLA. Those 5 teams are playing every year. Now, maybe you won't play all 5 every year, but you're not going to go a year that you're missing more than one of those teams if you're in that 5. I think that's just the reality. And I think that's maybe a reality that your team acknowledged this morning when it canceled the Washington series, or it was acknowledging a reality that Washington's just going to be a conference game anyway in a couple of years. I don't know. Okay. But I think UCLA, their program is at a little bit different stage of evolution with Lincoln Riley. It's a little bit more cutthroat, and meaning that willing to do what it takes to win. But I think what USC is not understanding is this level of physicality week in and week out. Okay, yeah, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, they're not as good as Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State when those teams are good. They're always very physical. It is not the same. Playing 7-5 or 8-4 in Minnesota is not the same as playing 7-5 or 8-4 Arizona State. That's just not. And so I think that's the thing I think USC has to account for, Mark, is the body blow, the compilation of that physicality, so that when you do go play those big 3 teams, and then maybe a couple of those games a year are out here in November in Pennsylvania, in Columbus, and Ann Arbor. I think that is something that USC fan probably doesn't understand and just would not understand not being in a league like this, that those blows add up. You only can take so many body blows. And then you get into the middle of the ring in a heavyweight fight, late in the fight, and you've taken a lot of blows from playing some, above average to mediocre teams, but they'll hit you. They will fight you in ways that you don't get fought when you play Arizona or Washington State. Just a different style of football. Those can be good teams, but it's not the same kind of football. And I do think it will take some time for them to get accustomed to that. And it's not the way that Lincoln Riley likes to play. Now, it's a little bit more like Chip Kelly likes to play. I mean, for all the new age stuff he's known for, I mean, a lot of his stuff really just comes back to new and creative ways to block and tackle and run the football, basically. Okay. It's just from a recruiting standpoint, they're clearly a notch below USC, and then clearly a notch below a lot of the top tier teams that we just talked about. So I think it's going to be more of an adjustment in both football and, frankly, basketball, which we're not talking about here. I think it's going to be much more of an adjustment for those teams than they probably think. And I think that the adjustment would have been lessened for them if Washington and Oregon had come in with them, so that they almost kind of had a Big Ten West, you know what I'm saying, where they were still playing teams of the same ecosystem, rather than all of a sudden starting in 2024, they're going to play week in and week out teams that just play at a physical level that week in and week out only a couple teams in the Pac-12 play with.
So you've offended our Pac-12 contingent of fans here, which is fine. I would have been right on board with you 20 years ago. Now I am still on board with you, but to a lesser degree. Now, before we continue on this path, I'm curious about this Michigan State situation. If at all true, would Michigan be approaching that scheduling proposal that they made to the Big Ten, if it is true, from the standpoint that we want a national schedule, we want to play visible games, or is that just a slight on little brother to say they are insignificant to us?
I don't think it's either one. I think what happened here last year was the last straw. That this thing is it's just a football game, guys. That's all that it is. It's not a call for curb stompings, drive-by shootings. Okay, waving 40-pound helmets like assaults with deadly weapons. It's just a football game, man. And even if it's true, and no one proved it, but even if it's true, those the Michigan guys that went up the tunnel were running smack and telling your mama jokes. So what? It's not anything close to what gets said and goes on in the football field of play, as you and I both can attest to, having covered this sport for a long time. The PC intersectionality woke police would lose their damn minds if we had a live mic on what was said on the field at many of these football games, regardless of race, creed, or color. Okay. So I think that was kind of the last straw, that you guys you can't handle it. I mean, this has gone to the point of obsession, ridiculous. People are getting assaulted. It's just, it's a diffusion. I think it's a recognition that the obsession level here has just become unhealthy. Now, I'm sure Sparty will take it the ways you're describing, but that's actually not its intention. Its intention is to basically get a TO, baby. Call a timeout. Okay, this is crossed the line and it's gone a little too far here.
We will continue the conversation, but we appreciate the contribution here in the comment here made by Jason. Thank you for that, Jason. Mark and Steve, the yin and yang of college football, ready to hear your thoughts. Steve, go blue. What I will say, because there's a super chat portion of that, which will come out of my mouth versus the rest of the time that I'm freely speaking, if you know what I mean, those last two words that came out of my mouth. Boy, that just that pierced the soul is what that did. Cut me deep,
Shrek. You cut me deep. I hear you. Yeah.
Could it not be said, Steve, though, that on the flip side of this physicality argument would be that the likes of Minnesota, Nebraska, Illinois, and slow plotting defenses, and again, I'm going to the stereotype here, will have difficulty with tempo and speed and space and all those good things?
I think that's not as prevalent as it was when you and I were growing up, right? The Big Ten, teams, even teams that ran exotic offenses back in the day, like Iowa, where Chuck Long and Ronnie Harmon would go out to the Rose Bowl and play and different game then. Hash marks were different, rules were different, recruiting was different. That dynamic played itself out in NFL drafts, right? When guys like Chris Carter were getting picked high to go into the NFL as a wide receiver at Ohio State, that was a breaking news story. It's not a breaking news story anymore. Right? So the reality is our league recruits better than theirs. Our league puts more guys in the NFL than theirs. Our league puts more teams in the playoff than theirs. This is a completely different level of combat compared to what they are used to. And I don't think it has anything to do with formations. I mean, every team in the Big Ten other than Iowa is going to be running a spread offense this fall. Every single one. Even Wisconsin has thrown out Barry Alvarez's paradigm. Everybody talks about Michigan and the amount of times it runs. Michigan is a spread team. It just uses spread formations to lessen the box to then run the football. Everyone's going to be running the spread. Other than Iowa, everybody's running it. So this isn't, a Big Ten team that saw the I formation or the power I or the veer option during Big Ten play for 3 months, Mark, and then, went out in California and saw a pro-style passing attack for the first time and lost its damn mind and didn't know what to do. All right, that's 40-year narratives, okay? Ohio State is putting more receivers in the NFL than USC is, okay? Michigan's putting more guys in the NFL than UCLA, and that wasn't necessarily the case when Terry Donahue was the coach out there and Bo Schembechler was the coach here. It is the case now. So you're not going to make up for much in terms of stylistic difference with physicality. The game is still won and lost in the trenches. Now, a player like Caleb Williams, who won't ever play in this league, obviously, he's going to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. That level of player absolutely can turn a game into street ball. Sure, but you still have to block at the point of attack. Otherwise, he's not just making plays running around. He's running for his life, and those are two totally different things. I'm not saying I think they're going to suck. I just think it's going to be more of an adjustment. I don't think they're going to come in here and lose to Minnesota and Iowa. Well, UCLA might. I don't think USC will. I am saying, though, that they're going to get punched in the friggin' mouth by Minnesota and Iowa, Mark, in ways they're not accustomed to. I'm not saying that the 7-5, 8-4, 9-3 teams in our league are better than theirs. I'm saying they're different than theirs. And you don't feel it for 3 days playing a game against Washington State. You just don't. You're going to feel it for 3 days playing PJ Fleck or Kirk Ferentz. Certainly Matt Rule's going to bring that element to Nebraska. You're going to feel that. Luke Fickell's going to try to modernize Wisconsin, but he's an old school coach too, in terms of temperament and mentality. And they're just not used to that. And you're going to face that now for 7, 8, 9 consecutive weeks every year, depending on how the schedule is configured. And I think it will take some time to get used to that.
So while you're not making an isolated prediction that Minnesota is going to beat USC, what you are making, I believe, because I agree with it, is that week after week after week, it's just like Oklahoma is going to the SEC.
Right.
And in no way do I think that they're better than, not as good as Mississippi State or Ole Miss, but that collection
Correct.
of will
analogy. Yes.
will be more, will result in more upsets.
Yeah.
You would think. So Minnesota will beat USC or fill in the blank, Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, whomever it is, more readily than what's going on right now versus good USC teams in the Pac-12.
Yeah. We're not dealing with Pete Carroll level of depth here. We're not dealing with Pete Carroll era level of line play. Not dealing with John Robinson era of line play here. And so it's going to take some time. There's, Lincoln Riley isn't being accused of tampering in the transfer portal because he inherited a roster with typical 2 to 3 year built-in developed depth at USC, but because he didn't. And so he's going to have to develop that depth on top of adding an entirely different layer of physicality. And for him, it's nothing compared to what he even saw in the Big 12 when he was there. For Chip Kelly, it's a little bit more like what he saw from USC and Stanford the last time he was in the Pac-12, and his Oregon teams could be very physical too. So it's going to be an adjustment for those teams for sure.
We're going to hit a couple super chats. Then I want to play off of something that you just stated concerning Pete Carroll in particular. David Greenshield, thank you so much for the contribution, sir. I could see USC winning a natty before Texas and Oklahoma.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, Texas has barely averaged 8 wins a year for the last decade plus in the Big 12. All right. So, all Texas and Oklahoma don't need the money. They don't have to do this. They were already making a ton of money. Okay. And well, Steve, it's another 20, 30 million. Have you ever seen the track facility at Texas, Mark? You ever seen it? Have you seen the swimming facility at Texas? What the hell are they going to do with another 20, 30 million, Mark? Seriously. What are they going to do with it? And here's what you're going to get. Y'all, all you guys at Texas and Oklahoma, all enjoy. We're making more money. Make sure you buy those shirts when you're 7-5. When Oklahoma goes from a 10-2 program to 7-5, 8-4, and Texas goes from 8-4 to 6-6. I hope you all feel like the extra 20 to 30 million you're making that you absolutely did not need. I'm sure that spoonful of sugar will help the medicine go down. I'm sure it will.
Steve Deace Burner, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate you. How likely is it, in terms of percentage, that the Big Ten gets 2 teams in the playoff again? Also, what would be the over-under on the amount of times Ryan Day dyes his beard on game day? I think it's 2.5 or so. Well, I think that dye, I'm guessing, I don't use it myself, contrary to popular belief by some. So I don't know how long that stuff lasts.
I think the odds are very high there will be 2 Big Ten teams in the playoff this year. I mean, you're going to have 3 Big Ten teams minimum will be in the AP top 6. Maybe 3 of them will be in the top 5. Bill Connolly just came out with his S&P ratings this week. 3 of them were Ohio State was 2, Michigan 3, and Penn State 5. If you look at the rest of the schedules for those 3 teams, I don't know that there is a game on their schedule that Penn State is an underdog in, except for it's probably about a field goal underdog at home to Michigan, probably about a touchdown underdog on the road to Ohio State. Ohio State's probably about a field goal underdog on the road to Michigan, not an underdog in any other game. Michigan may not be an underdog in any of its 12 games. So when you look at that, I think 2 of those 3 teams are probably coming out of this 11-1 at least, and maybe one of them goes 12-0 again.
Steve, you brought up the name Pete Carroll. Okay. Ohio State, you've also stated this, and I certainly agree that Ohio State has played elite level football longer than anybody in the country. Either elite or at least fielded good teams, have not been down. Michigan, of course, has been extremely good throughout the years. Okay, so I'm not disparaging Ohio State and Michigan being amongst the best in the country on a fairly regular basis. But when USC has been dominant, they have been like all-time John McKay, John Robinson, most recently Pete Carroll, like otherworldly, like we are possibly fielding the best team in the or the best team in a decade or of all time. And we know what the recruiting is in California. So if USC gets it right, and they may have the coach in place to get it right, then don't they have more of a ceiling to just really crank out NFL teams over there? And I will stop short of saying dominate this league, but come damn near close to it.
I would agree. I think the era that we're going into, there won't be any singular dominant teams. I think that I don't believe I'm going to be 50 this year, Mike. Mark, how old are you?
Oh, you got to hit me with that. 54.
Okay. I don't believe you and I will ever live to see a year that there's a Big Ten championship game that Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and USC are not in. Doesn't mean every year it'll be 2 of those 4 teams. Every year it's going to be one of those 4 teams. And most years it will be 2 of those 4 teams. Michigan is getting its NIL house in order as we speak. I think that the California recruiting thing is going to work both ways. I think now there's, I don't know if you've paid attention, Mark, in the news recently, and I say this sarcastically because I know you have. A lot of people leaving California in the last decade or so, Mark. Okay. So now my kid can get the hell out of here, can get the hell out of this toxic waste dump, and I get to watch him every single week. And he's going to play against USC and UCLA on top of that. Fine. I think the recruiting door swings both ways. I think just like the addition of Rutgers made New Jersey an even more fertile recruiting area for this league. The addition of Maryland made the DMV an even more fertile recruiting area for this league. I think the same thing will happen in California. I think that's going to swing both ways. I think you're going to see. Remember, they're having a hard time keeping quarterbacks in that state right now from going to Alabama and other places. I think that door's going to swing both ways. I think you're going to see Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State take more kids, and maybe Nebraska under Matt Rule take more kids out of that state than they've been able to in the past. I think you're going to see actually even more. And I think Wisconsin sensed this, that's why they went for the big hire in Luke Fickell. That's why they're letting him blow up the Barry Alvarez paradigm. I think that there is a clear sense, all you teams like Iowa, Northwestern, Illinois, God bless you all. make sure you max out this year. Okay. Make sure you max out this year, because you're not ever going to see Purdue in the Big Ten championship literally again, like ever again, like in the rest of your life. You just saw it this year. You're never seeing it again. It's never happening again. They're going to get rid of divisions. They're just going to pick the top 2 teams. And we're in a league now where 4 of the 6 or 7 greatest programs in the entire history of this sport are all in this league. And that's not even counting Nebraska, who 10 years ago would have been considered one of the 4, 6, or 7 greatest programs and has such a great tradition. They're probably still amongst the top 10 of all time. You're just not going to get a year, Northwestern, never happening again. They've been to multiple Big Ten championship games, in recent years. We will never see it again the rest of our lifetimes. I think that this thing is going to become more lopsided than it ever was before. Basically, it's going to look like the 70s. Except it's going to be 4 teams instead of 2.
And maybe Penn State even may need to scuffle to hang on to that 4th spot.
Someone's going to, and they're not all going to be great at the same time. Someone's going to have to suffer. Someone will have to take a step down, but there's never going to be a period of time that all 4 of those teams are irrelevant in the same season. Won't ever happen. And the addition of those teams, just like Urban Meyer's addition, raised the stakes on cutthroat recruiting in the Big Ten. Remember Brett Bielema complaining about Urban Meyer recruiting committed kids? And so the addition of Urban Meyer prompted Michigan to go and do what it took to bring Jim Harbaugh in and let him do what it takes to win, right? Same thing with NIL and everything else. Is those schools are going to separate themselves even more so than how they are right now. And because the other thing to think about too, Fox and CBS and ESPN aren't paying all this money so that, Illinois has a national stage. They're just not. All right. That's not what this is about. So all those teams and their administrations, I think you're going to see them be very aggressive. And like the UCLA administration is historically passive. If it does that, it's going to get run over in this league, and its fans will lose their minds, and they'll have to course correct. Just like you're seeing Michigan course correct now on NIL after having its this last recruiting class basically by their standards tank. The number 18 rated recruiting classes annually ain't cutting it against Ohio State, USC, and Penn State. That ain't cutting it. All right.
Okay, Steve. UCLA. I mentioned 54% winning percentage the last 10 years. Remarkably, they've only had 2 coaches the last 10 years. I thought Jim Mora was doing a fine job, not an exceptional job, but anyway, they move on from him. Chip Kelly's finally starting to turn it around. This has been a program, so I will cite one other program in a different sense. South Carolina has historically been an atrocious football program, despite filling a stadium and sitting in the Southeast. So it's inexcusable why they've been the Oregon State of the SEC for most of their history, which obviously has been recent history in the SEC, but playing in that region historically. Take it to the West Coast. UCLA's been better historically than South Carolina, had a nice run, of course, from the late 70s into the late 90s. However, marginal football program for the most part, sitting in a prime location for a number of reasons, but they're a bit of a wild card coming into this league because they could touch Penn State territory, or they could be Illinois.
Between they're a school. Imagine if they're basically Michigan without a glorious on-campus facility, elite public university, national name. Same color scheme, just different shades. Okay, I mean they have a lot in common with Michigan. It's just the investment in infrastructure, beginning with the on-campus stadium. Now we've got the Big House. They have arguably the most beautiful scenic setting in the entire sport, but it's not an on-campus facility. In fact, I would actually say of all of the teams coming in to our league, UCLA basketball, I think, might be poised to dominate, actually. I mean, if you look at bringing Mick Cronin in, that's more of a Big Ten vibe, right, in terms of style of play, okay? And I think they've already got that physicality. They've already got that kind of that mentality that you night in and night out in the Big Ten. So I think you bring them into our league with that recruiting base, and they've got that culture and mentality that they're accustomed to playing the way the Big Ten wants to play already, I mean, they are right away. I think UCLA basketball is much more prepared to hit the ground running and compete at a high level and an elite level and be an elite team in the league from the day it enters, much more than USC or UCLA football are.
We've talked at times about what we think should happen or what we would pursue as Big Ten commissioner. What do you think will happen regarding these other schools in the Pac-12? Of course, the Ohio State-Washington cancellation, some people believe to be a precursor to, much like Michigan, UCLA canceling in 2019, 2 years prior to USC and UCLA's announcement to the Big Ten. Where do you think between your nerds are going to say Stanford and Cal are the selections to make, and your football people will say Oregon and Washington are the selections to make for the Big Ten?
So if you look at every team that the Big Ten has added, have all been AAU schools. Now, Nebraska no longer is, but was at the time that the Big Ten added them. So who's left out there that's an AAU? What's it stand for again, Mark?
Oh, boy.
Association of American Universities or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Like that.
Cal, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington are AAU universities. So I think if Kevin Warren were still commissioner, the Pac-12 conference would be over right now, Mark. Over right now. I mean, there's no way Kevin Warren would say, you're going to visit SMU? No. We're finishing this thing off, okay? But he's not now. And that was kind of his vision and his master plan. And we got to hire a new commissioner right now. I think at a maximum, and I don't even know that this will happen, I think at a maximum there will be one more short-term Pac-12 television deal that will include San Diego State and SMU, but it will essentially be timed to coincide with when the Big Ten deal is up this next time around. I mean, it won't be some 5, 7, 8, 9 year. It'll be very clear. This is just being done. If it can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with. This is the hookup. That's all that it is. And I don't even know that will happen. I don't. Because I think the what are they called? They call the corner schools, right? Is that what they're called? Arizona State,
yep.
Colorado, and Utah. The question you have to ask yourself, if you're those schools, yes, you don't want to be the ones they blame for ending the Pac-12. On the other hand, you also know that the minute the Big Ten gets its administration back in order and says to Oregon and Washington, okay, Fox says, go ahead, bring you in, they're gone, right? So you don't want to be, so you're in a no man's land. You don't want to be the ones that gets accused of driving the stake to the heart of the conference. At the same time, Oregon and Washington are out of here they're out of your first opportunity. So I think that's where those administrations, if I had to guess, they are secretly hoping that they can't get any better deal on the table for television than they already have. So maybe that gives you the excuse to just jump now while you still control your own destiny. So I think, it's like the old line in Hunt for Red October, Mark, the hardest part of chicken is knowing when to blink. I think all these guys are looking at each other right now, like the Spider-Man gif, pointing back and forth. They all know it's over, but nobody wants to be the one that the country song is written about, that they get blamed for the breakup. That's what I think is going on. And I think if Kevin Warren were still here, then I think that the Big Ten, would already be making the addition of Washington and Oregon official.
Yeah, that's what's ironic and amusing by these situations. It's much like when OU and Texas took off for the Big 12, and you had the 10 remaining schools crying and whining and complaining, right, and talking about their solidarity and loyalty when they would take off for the same deal.
Yes. That's what those cornerstone schools, they've got to, that's what you're gauging right now. What's a worse fate? Maybe I joining the Big 12 in 4 years when I maybe have less leverage and take a less deal because I'm desperate and have nowhere else to go because Oregon and Washington are in the Big 10, or going right now when I'm going to I've got the leverage with the Big 12, right? That's what I think they're calculating right this minute. But I think that this is a league. Confucius say league who turns to SMU to save itself is not long to be a league for very much longer.
Get Larry Pilgrim here. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution, letting us know that 8 of the 10 schools are AAU, meaning in the Pac-12, I would assume the remaining 10. So Notre Dame. So Notre Dame apparently is not running after Big Ten money. That's going to push $90 million, maybe more than that per school via this new media deal in which they're making a third of that, something in that range, maybe less than that. But I got to think the cumulative impact of that, when you look, if you understand finances to a certain extent, it's not about 90 versus 30 in any one particular calendar year. It's about what you can do with that long term over and over and over.
Right. The opportunity cost. Correct. Yeah.
That I would just think that that the sheer dollar, the power of the dollar is finally going to push them. Now, if we had a commissioner of college football or a governing body that could force them into a conference, that would be something else. But there's these conferences are not going to cooperate with one another to force Notre Dame to do anything. I think that's already been proven. So do you think or believe that Notre Dame will make the move?
I think it comes down to, first, let me say, I respect their willingness to try to hold on to what they view as their principled identity. We don't see a lot of principle in our institutions these days, particularly ones of religious heritage. So I respect that. But you, of course, laid out the realities of the current situation at the same time. So I think the level of success, I think Marcus Freeman's going to answer your question, Mark. I think that if Marcus Freeman has a level of success, we've got about a 4 or 5 year détente here before we're close enough to the end of the ACC's granted rights that it's not nearly as cost prohibitive to bring those teams in. Okay. And when the next Big Ten contract expires at the same time. So, and that's, will the Pac-12 stay together through that period or break up now? Okay. So if Marcus Freeman has enough success the next few years that Notre Dame believes that it can still win at the level it wants and not have to join a league, then it won't. And if Marcus Freeman fails, then I believe it will. Because in the end, Notre Dame didn't allow red shirts either until they did, right? Notre Dame didn't allow partial academic qualifiers till Vinny Serrato and Lou Holtz came in and they took Prop 48 kids and started winning that and competing for national championships every year until they did, right? So, I mean, the idea that Notre Dame has been playing by these Ivy League schools and everybody else, that's not entirely true either, okay? So I really think it comes down to if Marcus Freeman, it can be successful enough that they don't have to sacrifice this last pillar of their integrity institutionally, their independence, then they won't. And if he can't win enough, then they'll view it as a systemic issue. And they have to understand that the current arrangement won't work, especially as what we have known as the ACC may very well go away.
So do you see this recent decision of Notre Dame in not pursuing the Utah offensive coordinator, Andy Ludwig, and paying out his buyout as an isolated decision, just a one-off, that was the determination there? Or is this a greater look into where Notre Dame is in competing at the very highest level for football talent?
Or is that a nice narrative to push out there for you couldn't hire Utah's offensive coordinator away to go to Notre Dame? I mean, do we honestly know the truth of that situation? We don't. Is that a truthful story? Is it a cover story? I don't know. I do know you went from 2 big name offensive coordinators to elevating your tight ends coach. I do know that.
Which he could be great, but but the likelihood is compromised that they've hired the right guy versus the 2 previous candidates. No question about that. Steve Deace, Michigan podcast in the Bigger 10, and follow Steve all around media. And if you know about his day job, it will make you think and it'll hit you here So follow the Steve Deace Show as well. Steve, let us know what's going on in Michigan podcast in the Bigger 10.
Well, I'm a little busy with the day job this week. So this week we took a hiatus. We'll be back next week. And I mean, there's a ton of stuff going on in terms of Big Ten scheduling, and we'll be getting into. It's close to the time of year. Around the end of this month, I'll do my annual one and only bracketology that I do 2 weeks before Selection Sunday, before any conference tournament games are played. So to show how inane and overrated this cottage industry of bracketology has become. So we'll get into all that stuff here next week on the show.
Steve, we appreciate you being here. We would like to urge everyone to show up every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, but subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because we may need to reschedule at times. But it's our earnest effort to make it every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern time with Steve. Steve, appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
You got it, brother. Take care. Go Blue.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. I'll hang on here for just a few more minutes to let people know that here's what we've got planned for the next several days, is that I have released the first two of a three-parter. I am not Steve Deace. There we go. The banner reads Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. There we go. So I've released the first two in a series of my college football coaches rankings. So we've made it from 69 all the way through 21. We will release the top 20 soon. So I will release that either later tonight, possibly, or we may release that first thing in the morning on Friday. And then this weekend, we go live with you, because this was a raving success. Last year, what we did was we released our Power 5 coaches rankings here live, and we took your calls and comments and questions, but we will release the videos, and then sometime this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, we will all get together live, and we will discuss the coaches rankings, and I will take your shots on my coaches rankings. Also, many of you are eagerly awaiting, with bated breath, the Oreo. I can't mess up the official title of this. That was just unforgivable right there. The Great Oreo Cookie Challenge. The Great Oreo Cookie Challenge. And we are scheduling that for Monday evening. So I might as well announce right now exactly what this is going to look like. And I welcome your suggestions on how to improve the process, possibly. So some of you know that I can down Oreos, unlike just about anyone, under 185 pounds. So I'm right on the edge. We're going to knock off 10 here soon. But this stunt is not going to help me knock off 10, but we'll get past it and we'll work on it. So the Great Oreo Cookie Challenge is that we will bring on my favorite Oreo selection, which is, of course, just the traditional, but double stuff. The double stuff. So the standard Oreo, which if you go online, there are Oreo selections all over the place that I was not aware of, because I'm pretty much a traditionalist, even in my dessert fare. And so I will bring on the package of double stuff Oreos, which I believe, if I get the party size, well, I know this because I counted the last time I purchased one of these last week. I got the party size of double stuff Oreos, in which there are 52 in the pack. So I will have 52 Oreos here, and you all will test my college football knowledge, and you will ask me trivia questions. And for every trivia question that I miss, I will have to eat a cookie. And I don't know at what point we will end this. Maybe I will need some direction on the best way to conclude this, whether I got to sit here for like 8 hours and eat an entire package. I don't see that happening. Not that I won't eat the entire package, but us doing an 8-hour live stream, unless there's just a wealth of super chats coming in, then that's to be under consideration. So what I had thought of was, would there be a way to involve all of you in this? So to bring on callers, and then you guys prepare yourself with maybe your own package of Oreos or your favorite treat. I don't want to pin you down, and Gumby Too Sexy likes the mint Oreos. They're pretty good. Didn't want to pin you down specifically on Oreos. If your favorite snack food is, I don't know, honey buns or Doritos or whatever it might be, it'd be kind of tough to find the equivalent per serving. However, and then we could play along together. However, I don't know exactly how that would work, because if I bring on one of you, I would not want to create a logjam in which I'm on with a particular caller and then we're the only ones competing, because I would want to compete against everyone at the same time. But obviously, we all don't have cameras on at the same time. So at this point, I'm thinking you guys ask the questions, I answer the trivia questions, and the ones I get wrong, I have to eat a double stuffed Oreo, and I can eat quite a few. So we'll just have some fun with that. Gregory's going to come prepared with his Nutter Butters, and we will go from there. All right, so that is the Great Oreo Cookie Challenge. And again, if you have a better way to conclude it, then I am all ears. I am not the idea guy per se. I'm going to need a lot of milk, because you will find out that there's a unique way in which I consume milk with the Oreos. So I will not explain that now. You will just have to witness it, that the milk is going to be consumed with the Oreos in a special, unique way. So that also a bit of a tease there. Okay. If you have other ideas, whether they involve food or other things, they don't have to involve food, that will keep things a little bit light, a little bit interesting, a little bit otherwise. That one was served up to me. I didn't come up with that idea. That was handed to me by a viewer. So that was the suggestion of someone. So if you have any suggestions along that way, we have some other suggestions that have come in regards to how we can shake things up. And also coming up here in the next couple of weeks, we will do a State of the Voice of College Football address. So, wow, I'm sure all of you will be flocking in to hear the State of the Union address, meaning the State of the Voice of College Football channel address right here at the Voice of College Football. Mark's going to be the one who's double stuffed after the Oreo challenge. I don't know. I can take quite a few. I think I'm good for depending on what I eat. So I can't be stuffed, of course, but I also can't be completely empty stomach. I have to eat something. So that's the perfect place to be, to eat light prior to that. And then I think the first, because I know from experience, the first 25 or 30, no problem, no issue. The first 25 or 30, not going to be an issue, and maybe even beyond that. All right, that should be a good time. I believe we're going to do that Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. That sounds like a good time. And again, we've released the first two in our series of our coaches rankings. We're going to go live this weekend. I want to hear from all of you on our coaches rankings. We've released 69 all the way through 21. We are going to do the top 20. We've got our Miami show coming up tonight with the Wholesome One over on the Miami channel at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then we also have West Virginia Live on Friday. And we will do some live streams, call-in shows coming up very soon as well. We will hang on here if, in fact, Well, I do have an appointment at 6, but if anyone out there would like to join the show and you've got a question or comment to make, I've just left the link as we have simulcasted on the USC channel today because, of course, USC was involved in the conversation with Steve. So we are simulcasting on the main channel and the USC channel, and you've got the link there to join the show. Oh, my goodness. I am checking on my 6 o'clock appointment here. HR Picking Stuff is here. Just dropped in for some football chatter. Well, you missed the football chatter, HR. We had Steve Deace on here. We've been on here for 70 minutes at this point. And yes, you can join the show. And we got Mr. David Greenshield stopping by. Look at this.
Wow.
How are you?
Yeah. How you doing, Mark?
Good.
So Oreos.
I believe you cut out on us there, David.
No, can you hear me okay, Mark?
Now I can.
Okay, my bad. Yeah, so
You're good.
Oreos are the cookie of preference for the great Mark Rogers. It's not a chocolate chip as
No, I wouldn't say that. I would take a
Just kinda
homemade
curious.
chocolate chip cookie over an Oreo.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just a personal preference of mine.
Yes.
I'm more of a chocolate chip. And you know what? Very underrated. I am actually a very big oatmeal raisin fan. Not a lot of people
Yeah, I run
dig
away
the
from
oatmeal
those.
raisin.
No,
No?
thank you.
Not so much, huh, Mark? Well, by the way, I wanted to chime in. I found your conversation with Steve to be very interesting, per usual. So much college football brain power in one room should not be allowed at one time. But to and maybe you guys touched on this in the earlier segment of the conversation because I jumped in late. Just how much does Steve and how much do you feel this creates a competitive balance where adding USC and adding UCLA makes the Big Ten that much closer to the SEC, bottom line?
Well, for one, I was trying to come up with some kind of scale to show where I stand on the disparity between the two conferences currently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's not overly significant, but I don't think it's minuscule. I think it's decided the SEC's advantage over the Big Ten currently. And I believe that Oklahoma and Texas are better additions to the SEC than USC and UCLA. However, the Big Ten additions could prove to be more meaningful because USC could pack that kind of wallop as an elite.
Well, that was the point I was trying to illustrate, and I've illustrated to you before, is of the 4 programs, if you were taking, of the 4 programs, their best prospects, who's going to have the best winning percentage over the course of, let's say, next 5 to 10 years, would you, of those 4 programs, which program would you take? I said I would take USC.
I would too.
Because although I do not think, and maybe it's because I like Lincoln Riley. I actually think he's a really good coach. And on top of that, I do think, although I don't think he can get them back to the Pete Carroll era. I know you were talking about like the dark eras of USC football with Steve, but I think he is the one coach that can get them to a level to where they can get to a playoff and compete, at that level.
My point wasn't necessarily pro Pete or Lincoln Riley. It was more so about being pro USC, that we've had 3 different coaches field teams over the last 50 years that would be considered for a possible greatest team of all time. That when USC's really rolling and it has the right man in charge, that they can eclipse everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we don't want to get Tim and Tony and the crew too excited over there, but although I'm sure they're already there. But no, I tend to agree. I mean, I think that the other thing too is, with the California case, you look at the quarterback talent that's come out of California. You look at some of the skill player talent come out of there. I mean, his ability to get that, you'd think as a coach with his track record of developing quarterback play, I always thought was like, 2+2 here, and I know that, Ohio State got CJ Stroud and obviously Alabama got Bryce Young, but I thought the chances of Lincoln Riley being able to get a really good quarterback out of California in the upcoming years and develop that quarterback into a Heisman finalist or Heisman Trophy winner are probably pretty good when you look at his track record. Although I find it interesting, Ohio State, he got Caleb Williams, was I think an East Coast guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is he not?
Yes. DMV guy.
Yeah, right. So
Texas should, from a talent standpoint of what they've already recruited, and shown to be able to recruit even with a marginal program, and obviously where they're located. We went to this during the Buckeye show this week, where we showed what states are
I saw the breakdown
producing the most NFL players. It's Texas #1. Now they probably have to share them at Texas's peak. They probably have to share them more so than USC would.
Right.
Share Southern California talent.
Right. Well, I always felt with Texas and Florida, they've been a feeder system for more than just their major programs over the years. I mean, a lot of schools are going to come into Texas and come into Florida, in dabble in that recruiting base, and obviously they'd be foolish not to. But I was going to bring this up too on a later show, Mark. I mean, and maybe you've weighed this. We've always talked about Texas being the underachiever program. Can a case be made that Texas A&M is right there with Texas as an underachiever program? If not, maybe in some cases more so? In the last, let's say, 10 years or so.
So since joining the SEC, we're putting Texas A&M on the same expectation level as Texas.
I mean, I'm not, and I get it. They're on the tougher side of the SEC as far as the divisions, but again, you still have that state to recruit from. Over the last 10 years, if you look at their record, wouldn't you have expected just a little bit more, even though it's on that side of the SEC?
Oh, I expect a whole lot more.
That's what I'm saying.
I would have to go to Texas, and I would have to live and breathe among those people, or have some kind of contact with somebody who really knows, does the Texas brand still hold that much of a Michigan versus Michigan State advantage over Texas A&M than it did in 1975?
Yeah. I don't think it's the Darrell Royal era, there, as far as holding that kind of weight, like, maybe in its heyday. I think that I've always felt that there's something in Texas with their booster culture or their administration or something down there that doesn't, I mean, and give Mac Brown a lot of credit for being able to kind of navigate that and having as much success as he had for the period of time that he did.
Well, I hear the same things that you do, and I've had enough people try to explain it to me. I've never had it explained other than there is more meddling going on with that football program than any football program in the country, from boosters and from big money people, from even politicians, even government in that state that's unlike anywhere else. It's just completely different.
Yeah, yeah, that's I've heard that as well, and it's a shame the way that the coaches have just burnt out. I still think that there's a case that could have been made that they. If you said this at the time, I thought they did Tom Herman a little bit wrong there, Mark. I mean, I think a case could be made. He should have been given a little bit more time.
Yeah. Do we really not believe that Tom Herman could have gone 13-12 the last 2 years?
There
He
you
was
go.
coming off a season. It was the 2020 COVID year. So we all have our
Right.
different evaluations of how legitimate that season was. But they went 7-3. They lost 3 games like this close.
Mhm.
And they would have been playing in the Big 12 championship game, but they had a late turnover against Iowa State. Iowa State kicks the game-winning field goal. Otherwise, they're playing in the Big 12 championship game. And I don't know if Tom Herman can get fired if they beat, let's say, Oklahoma in the Big 12 that's who they would have played. Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game.
Right. Yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure on him that year because I think according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, I think he had like a top 5 roster in the country coming into that year. And it was what his 3rd year, I believe, that year. And I always say a third or 4th year, maybe. I think it was his 4th year because he came in, I think, in 2017, right, Mark?
Yes.
So it was his 4th year. And I always say by year 3, year number 4, you got to show some food on your plate. I'm not saying you have. Well,
Are you
I mean,
telling Jimbo Fisher that?
oh, why do you think I brought up Texas A&M as an
Season
underachiever?
6 coming up?
Yeah, I know. They backed up the Brinks truck. Well, they back up the Brinks truck for everything at Texas A&M. Coaches, recruits, all of it, Mark.
Yes, they've got a Brinks truck specially marked for each need, I guess.
Right. Yeah. They literally have the money printing down there somewhere to pay their coaches and go out and drop the bags. Like everything that they said in that 30 for 30 that they did on the SMU football team that was going on in SMU, I always thought was going on at like all those schools in the old Southwestern Conference all those years.
I just recorded with a Texas A&M guy from 247 Sports right before I started this live stream. And I said to him, I said, Jimbo Fisher has not posted the kind of records that people were expecting at Texas A&M, but those 9-4 seasons were at least satisfactory considering that he was given all this money. He had won a national championship somewhere else, and the recruiting classes were so good that now this is the first time during his tenure, coming off of 5-7, coming off a number 1 recruiting class that has crumbled to a certain extent. That might be overstated by some people. It's not crumbled. It is lessened. And now he hires Bobby Petrino, which is a
wow,
which is a basically an admittance that his offense is not working. And that's also considered a questionable hire by many,
yeah,
including myself, that this is the first time he's really facing adversity.
Yeah. No, well, he should have faced adversity a long time ago. I always said too, Mark, and I think you agreed with it. What he achieved in a COVID year, I thought was very overrated.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he, was playing a North Carolina team in a bowl game that was down however many players, and that was a really good game for 3.5 quarters, basically, when it probably shouldn't have been. And the one other good team he got which played that year, which was Alabama, totally dump trucked him. And then everybody thought he was going to like build from that. And, he did, have that recruiting class, that he got, quote unquote. Even Nick Saban said that. So if Nick Saban can say that, then you know what I mean?
He is the czar of the sport. Yeah, that was a good team, but yeah, they I think the best win they had that year was against a 6-5 Auburn team.
Yeah.
No.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Mark. I think this could be it. I mean, if he goes 5-7 this year, 6-6 even, can you keep the guy? But what is that buyout though? It's got to be ridiculous.
Well,
I've heard it was a ton of dough.
We had it. The last I heard, it was somewhere in the $85 million range. But it's getting knocked down every year. Plus, I got to think that that's negotiable.
Well, I think Jimbo, if he gets let go, is going to be doing quite well.
We're giving you a lump sum of $40 million. Bye.
Oh, poor Jimbo.
So, yeah.
Hey, great show tonight, by the way. It's good to see you. I think you guys had more viewers tonight, which I thought was encouraging too, by the way.
That is always encouraging. Yes.
All right. So Monday, when's the Oreo challenge? Monday night then,
I believe
right?
we're going to shoot for 6 Eastern.
Nice. We get to see Mark Rogers stuff his face with Oreos.
Yes. Bring your toughest college football questions.
I will make a list, Mark.
Make a list. Now let's be somewhat kind to me out there. Like, I don't need questions like, how many yards did Johnny Manziel run for against, Lamar in the second game of the 2013 season? Let's keep it within reason here.
I thought you covered Red Grange, Mark. You've been around so long.
I just missed good old Red Grange.
Great show, Mark.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, my friend.
Thank you, David.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it.
Yep. Bye.
The Galloping Ghost. How many people knew that? The Galloping Ghost, Red Grange. All right. Appreciate you being here. I am off to talk. Oregon. We're going to talk some Oregon football here in a few minutes with Eric Scopel from Duck Territory on 247 Sports. So be looking out for our Oregon position previews for the spring. We're cranking out spring position previews for all of you here at the Voice of College Football. They are coming soon to a team channel near you. We will see you soon. Again, catch up on those coaches' rankings. We're going to go live with all of you this weekend to discuss our coaches' rankings right here at the Voice of College Football.